Greetings, adventurers! Welcome back to the show. On this episode, we're going to take a look at some loot that I have collected recently in the form of some pretty cool miniatures that I have gathered up from around the internet from various retailers. These are not painted yet, but I just couldn't resist, and I wanted to show these off now that I have them here in the old Delver's dungeon. When I do get these painted up, I will share them with you. I'm pretty proud of my painting ability. It's coming along rather nicely. But with that all said, let's go ahead and take a look. Now, the first line that I've gotten here are some minis from Darksword. And if you're not familiar with Darksword miniatures, you can go to their website. It's linked in the description below. Just on a lark, I decided to pick up a couple of their Visions in Fantasy miniatures. I've got a, what is this here? This is a Ranger with Bow, this particular miniature here. And yes, I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the package in just a second. And then I have a Female Assassin miniature here. I just kind of picked two that looked pretty good and were fairly generic and sort of, would fit in just about any fantasy RP scenario. So, with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got. Now, of course, I've opened these and checked them out a little bit, but you can see the packaging is really nothing special. It gets the job done. It's just a standard plastic bubble on a card. They do pad them out. At least these two are padded with some foam there. And I'm sorry if I'm pulling that out of shot. I hope that's better. So the two that I have, and you can see also on the Female Assassin here, these are both multi-part miniatures. So there'll be some gluing and some pinning and some cleaning and that sort of thing. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got in each package. These are already open, but they peel open. There's nothing special to them, and voila, you've got a little paint tray there if you need it. The Ranger with Bow miniature, and I'm gonna hold that up to the cam and let it get a nice focus on there. But the Ranger with Bow miniature is a two-piece, and on the sprue that comes with, there's his hooded head and hand-clutching bow. In the overall, there's a fair amount of flash on here, but most of it will be trimmed away when I snip these off and use some cyanoacrylite glue. I actually use Gorilla Glue there, and there's a little bit of cleanup that needs to be done on the base. And speaking of the base, this is a nice mini. This is one of the few minis I have that literally just out of the package, I'm okay with the base. I hope you can see that better. It's a nicely detailed base. It's a little smaller than a dime, but it gets the job done. Once I clean off the little bit of flash, it's going to be nice and stable. I don't think the head and the bow hand are really going to cause any problems as far as balance on the tabletop. The sculpt itself is solid. It's a very practical looking mini. There's no giant shoulder pauldrons, no 4-foot long armored spikes sticking out or anything like that. And if you go and you check out Darksword miniatures, their various lines, most of what they make is fairly practical. There's a good degree of cheesecake in there, but by and large, what you see is just comfortable, lived-in fantasy kind of gear. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Female Assassin. She's a little more exotic looking than the Ranger with Bow. And I'll take her out of her package. Both of her hands have to be glued on, and boy, won't that be fun. Look how slender those arms are. So that's gonna take a good deal of patience. And she's got a little bit more flash on her. Obviously, there's a bit of sprue down here for her base, and I'll talk about that in just a second. So she's got some flash on her, and when I opened it, a bunch just literally fell off at the touch of a finger. So that's not an issue. There's some mold line up near hood there. That's going to take some TLC to get off without without damaging. And then we come over here. These are her two poignards that she carries, and you can see there's a fair degree of flash on there, but again, that should just, that should just pop off with a fingernail. I don't have, unfortunately, I don't have any more of the Dark Sword miniatures to show off right now. But like I said, I picked two that I thought seemed kind of emblematic of their degree of skill and so forth. And I do want to point out there are some cool things which unfortunately I can't show you here. And there at the end of this video there will be links to the pictures of the two miniatures that I have painted. But the thing that I like about Dark Sword is not only is their stuff more or less fantasy practical, they have a lot of lines that harken back to late first edition and early second edition D&D artwork, which is really cool. Larry Elmore, who else? Caldwell, Jeff Easley. They've got all those old iconic images kind of redone as miniature cast. And even cooler is if you're a fan of A Song of Fire and Ice, Game of Thrones, they have an entire authorized line of miniatures. Go check those out. I'll link directly to them in the description of George R.R. Martin miniatures. Now, these are aimed at representing the characters as they are in the books. So, Tyrion doesn't look like an exact copy of the actor on the show, for example. You don't get a 28 millimeter scale Peter Dinklage. It's more akin to the book. But they're gorgeous, just the same. They're a visual treat. And if you like the show and you want to run the Song of Fire and Ice D20 game, or if you want to brew up something with a more proper older edition, you can now have your characters represented out there if you're just that much of a stickler for detail. And they're just plain nice to have, even if Cersei's going to be a nice queen in your game. Well, then you have a nice miniature that's not in a martial pose there. That's good to use for that. Now I was gonna talk a little bit about the assassin and her base here, and I mentioned how much I liked the base on the ranger. That's very practical. It's round. It's going to fit nicely on the map. The assassin, I'm not crazy about. Its base is an oval that's almost kind of a broccoli base, but it's not attached. If you trim the sprue from the bottom of the assassin's feet there, you wind up with a couple of pins that you can just pop down therein. But what I will probably do is go ahead and mount her on a secret weapons miniature base, which I'm going to talk about secret weapons in another episode. Or I can even, if you take a look at this, if I trimmed her down just a little bit, I've got a standard, industry standard slotted 25 millimeter base, and up there you go. She'll fit on that just fine, and I can decorate that up as I want. This guy here, hey, he'll go in the bits box. I can use it as a counterweight. If I've got a miniature that I think this base suits better, I can do that with it. But if you happen to pick up the female assassin mini and you want to mount her up there, it'll probably be just fine. I just prefer the more symmetrical rounded bases for my miniatures, or for the more elaborate secret weapons bases. So that's a good example of the Dark Sword Visions in Fantasy. I like them. I think you'll like them if you're into a lot of mini work on your table and you just want to grab something that's beautiful to paint. I think you can really do well with the Dark Sword line. Now, those aren't the only minis I've got to talk about on this episode. I want to discuss something that I actually received as a gift. This was actually supposed to have been sent to me by a friend of mine. They kind of got caught in shipping for a while. So when they finally arrived, I was very happy to see. Um, and the first thing I want to discuss, because it's the first thing you're going to notice, is the packaging. This is beat to hell, and you think, "Oh wow, well that's terrible. That travel's terrible," but it doesn't. This is a plastic shell like the Otherworld miniatures has. It's a little bit more durable than the plastic on the Dark Sword. But as badly damaged and crushed as this is, the miniatures inside, which we'll get to in just a second, the miniatures inside are flawless. These things stood up to being shipped from the manufacturer to someone's house, probably opened up, checked out, packed back up, shipped somewhere else, then finally shipped here to the Delver's Dungeon. And this is the net result of months of road travel for these guys. But like I said, the plastic case they've got this in, the clamshell, held together, and it's just fine. Bravo Studio Miniatures. That's who makes these. These are done by Studio Miniatures. You can get these online through hassle-free, or you can go to Studio Miniatures directly and purchase them. I think you're good either way. Hassle-free has more and different stuff than Studio Miniatures does, in addition to stocking Studio Miniatures. But if you're specifically looking for the miniatures I'm about to talk to you about, now that I've told you about the packaging, I would say just go ahead and go to Studio Miniatures. I'll link hassle-free and Studio both in the bottom, in the description at the bottom, rather. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive in. And this just, watch, I probably latched this thing shut. Yeah, this just pops right open. And you've got this lovely color card, and zombies are du jour, of course. This is Z-Clips, the Chronicles of U1 Eve. And there's the Studio Miniature contact information, a Studio Miniatures production. And then, tucked away nicely behind that, you have these bases, which I'm going to talk about those bases again in just a second. These are 30mm round beveled edged bases. So we'll go ahead and put those there. A little bit of foam packaging there. Set that aside. And here are the miniatures. Now, if you happen to be a fan of a certain computer game out there done by a fairly popular company that's built up a good head of steam lately, then you might notice more than a passing resemblance with these miniatures to characters in one of their more popular team-based first-person shooter games. Goodness knows I sure did, which is why I solicited this particular set of miniatures as a birthday present. And so here we have a female. We'll call her I don't know. We'll call her Xandra with a Z. How about that? And then we've got a guy looks like he could work at in an IT department in an office. He's wielding a silenced MAC-10 there. You know, looks like he could maybe use some pills or something for injuries, but you know, he'd have to grab those. And this guy here, he's slinging an M16. He's kind of an older dude. I would say he looks like maybe a William or a Will, perhaps. There you go. And finally, we have a biker guy, but he's probably got a sensitive side. So maybe he's a Leslie, perhaps. I don't know. But anyway, all kidding aside, yeah, these are the Left 4 Dead survivors, effectively. This is the first set of survivors, and Studio actually does the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors and all the special infected. So you've got your boomers, smokers, hunters, on and on and on. And they do an absolutely beautiful job with sculpting those. And what I like about these, and I didn't mention this with the Dark Sword earlier, is the scale. These are true 25mm miniatures. This, if you compare these, let's grab Zoe here, and that's going to flip over, so I'm going to move that out of the way. Let's compare 25 millimeter Zoe to 28 millimeter Ranger guy, who currently doesn't have a head, and you can see the slight but noticeable difference. I'll grab the female assassin and stand her up next to Zoe. And there, it's a lot more noticeable, the scale difference between the two. But I like that these are true 25 millimeter miniatures. Painting them will be a bigger challenge, but I think in the long run, I like a smaller miniature, not ones that say 28, but are closer to 30 or in some cases 32 millimeters. Now, to discuss the bases, as I was saying earlier, and I'm going to grab one of the guys out of the box. The Zoe model is a little bit smaller, so we'll get probably the biggest guy physically in the box, and that's Francis. This guy is practically lost on that 30 millimeter base. I think it just looks too big and bordering on silly. However, if you take a look at a 25 millimeter slotted base, I think it looks a lot better. It will work a lot like if you're running an all flesh must be eaten game, I think, and you're doing heavy minis, or even if you're just playing the zombies game and you want to use the iconic survivors for player tokens, I think the 25 millimeter base is a lot nicer than the 30 millimeter base. So, yeah, what I did was I just grabbed some of these out of my bits box and said 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. I got enough slotted 25 millimeter bases, and that's what I'll go with when I paint these guys up. And also, just like the Dark Sword minis, I will show off at the end of the video just a real quick view of these miniatures painted up from Studio Miniatures. That's really about it. I like both of these products. I recommend them. I think if you're doing a heavy minis based game and you want some really good looking fantasy miniatures that are maybe a little off the beaten track from the usual offering from Reaper or the D&D mini painteds, pre-painted plastic ones, you could definitely do a lot worse than Dark Sword. But I'm not sure you could do much better because they're very nice. They're nice sculpts. They should clean up fairly easily. They're a good scale. They're what I call close to AD&D scale, 25 millimeter. Although they're a little bit closer to 28 millimeter, probably true 28 millimeters. And the Left 4 Dead Survivors from Studio Miniatures, which again you can purchase it hassle-free also. These guys are just neat looking. I don't know that I'll ever run a zombie apocalypse game where I say, hey, somebody's going to play Zoe and somebody's going to play Francis, somebody's going to play Bill, somebody's going to play Lewis. But they're going to look darn good sitting next to my computer once I get them painted up. That's the show. That's this episode. I hope everyone enjoyed. I do want to mention that the next episode is also not going to be D&D related. I'm going to do another product review after I play test it. But unless you've already snuck and looked at my Facebook page, you probably don't know what it's going to be. So I'll save that one for a surprise. After that, the next episode after that, which is coming in just a couple of weeks, it's going to be big. I think you're going to like it a lot. We're going to get back to D&D. We're going to get back to D&D in a very fundamental way. And we're going to talk about some really, really cool stuff regarding D&D. So if you've got an interest in some different kind of wargaming, stay tuned for the next episode, which will hopefully be out next Sunday. And the following Sunday, like I said, it'll be a big episode. Hey, thanks for watching. Please click subscribe. If you like this episode, please click like. Check out Studio Miniatures. Check out Dark Sword. Check out Hassle Free. And I will talk to you all next time. Take care. And okay, guys, before I forget, Here are some lovely images of the miniatures featured on this episode, but these are painted up. These are from the manufacturer's website. In order, we've got the male ranger with bow, we have the female assassin wielding the two daggers, and of course, at the very end, we've got our intrepid survivors there in a nice group shot. Again, I just want to emphasize, because there was some confusion about my episode 2.5, this is not my painting here that you're seeing. I wish it was, but it's not. So stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks everyone for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.